How your mama doing? How your mama doing? How you doing? So it is Friday today, and apparently Fridays are my motivational day because I feel like I have a motivational message, which I don't really like to do. I like to teach, and I like to be able to give you fire as content. However, I just recognized that last Friday I jumped on and it was a little more motivational. And today I feel like it's a little more motivational because I'm not teaching nothing heavy today. So if you don't feel like you need to learn, then jump off. Nope. Hey, listen. I feel no kind of way about that. You're welcome to join your Friday. So whether you are catching me morning, afternoon, I don't even think it is morning. I don't know what time it is right this moment. But whatever time you're catching, say hello, right? For those of you who don't know who I am, number one, it is No Wig Friday, as you can see. Again, um, my name is Lachelle Barnett. I am a brand strategist. I help coaches, consultants, people who are in the expert space navigate that journey from traditional, employee to online coach. And so, what I wanted to jump on and talk about today is, I have all these great conversations, whether it's with business besties or consults, or today I had an opportunity to have a phenomenal conversation with Doreen Rainey. For those of you who don't know who that is, she is the one that manages Steve Harvey's Act Like a Success brand. So just some of the things from our conversation and things that were just on my heart that I figured I would jump on and share because this entrepreneur journey is not for the faint of heart. I know that entrepreneurship is kind of like a buzzword now. Everybody wants to quit their job and live their best life and blah, blah, blah. And hey, do you. But the journey is not for the faint of heart. Like there's a reason why 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years, right? There's a reason why 80% of entrepreneurs never make it over $100,000, right? There are reasons for that. Why? Is because the journey is not for the faint of heart. And since I know that, both firsthand and just through clients, I figured I would just jump on and share some things that I feel like will help somebody, hopefully. And if you find that they help you, share the message, right? Share the message with somebody else. So the first thing that I was thinking about is just how many fears we as entrepreneurs have to manage and overcome and live with and all of that. I know that I was listening to Russell Brunson's podcast today. He's one of the people that I follow online. He's actually the only person I follow online. Um, and one of the things that he was saying in his podcast was people overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in 10. And I was like, bruh, if that ain't the truth, right? I see both myself when I started my business as well as all of the entrepreneurs that I serve that are in my circle who have the same challenge, right? It's like they overestimate what they can do in 12 months, but they underestimate what you can do in a whole 10-year span. And so when I thought about, some of the things that he was sharing, I thought about number one, how I started my own journey in this business. So for those of you who don't know, before I started this business, I was running a nonprofit. And I had been running a nonprofit for probably about 4 years when we started running into some bumps, some hurdles, whatever you want to call it, challenges. And whenever I experience challenges in my own life and the business that I run, whatever, I know that that's a sign for me to pause, get off the road, spend some really dedicated time with God so he can give me my marching orders and figure out, what I need to do differently. And so when I started experiencing these things with my nonprofit, I'm like, okay, well, let me figure out how to fix this. And the way I know how to fix shit is to go to God. And so I have a spot that is called the Hermitage. And it is, I don't know, maybe an hour from where I live. I live in Indiana currently, and until I get to Dallas. Shout out to my Dallas people. Shout out to my South Bend people as well. Um, so I went there, about an hour from the house, and man, so many things happened that day that I won't even like. That'll take us a whole 2 hour video, and ain't nobody got time for that. Um, but as I was walking, so I'm a walk and pray kind of person. And as I was walking and praying and listening to God, one of the things that he told me was that season is over with. And I just remember feeling all kinds of things, right? Some of it was sad. Well, it really wasn't sad. It was anger, It was extreme sadness. It was guilt. It was shame. Because, for those of you who are in my area, the South Bend area, and were familiar with the nonprofit, um, it was a big deal, right? Like, we were doing great work. We had already had some pretty public, lots of public positive things happening, but also a few public negative things happen. And so when God told me that that business was over, it felt very personal. It felt like I had failed. And then having to, it's one thing for God to tell you in your own quiet time. It's another thing for you to have to walk that thing out. Right. So now I got to meet with my board of directors and I got to tell them what God said. And, I got to cry through all of that. Then I got to get on publicly and tell, like, it's a whole ordeal to let something go. Right. Something that is your baby, something that, it's just a whole ordeal. So, but the reason why I tell that story is because it's one of the first times as it relates to this business, not my life, but as it relates to this business, that I had to give myself permission to go after the unknown, right? To give myself permission to go after legacy, to give myself permission to have faith, right? And to do the thing that nobody understood, because there were so many people who came to me in that ending of that organization. I was like, you can't let this go. This is like the greatest thing since blah, blah, blah. And, all these reasons why I have to do it. And I'm like, that's not what God told me. Right. But every time, so first of all, it wasn't something I wanted to do anyway. I never wanted to let it go. Right. So every time somebody comes to you and says, keep it, we need this in our community, man, there's something that tugs on your heart that says, okay, maybe I didn't hear God correctly, or, maybe I, can figure out a way to do both, or what, there's a negotiating that happens internally. And so I share this story because I see a lot of entrepreneurs that are in that season of figuring out what's next. Sometimes the next is a whole new business. Like people who are switching from like MLMs to coaching. Sometimes the what's next is within the same business. I need to make some pivots and some shifts, and I just don't know how to do that. Right. And the thing that we have to get in the habit of doing is giving ourselves permission to go after, number one, the deepest desires of our heart, to go after whatever God has really called us to do, right? Like whatever legacy looks like for you individually, I promise you that you will not create a successful business or reach fulfillment or whatever it is that you're trying to do without giving yourself permission. And I'm talking about repeatedly throughout your journey as an entrepreneur, and as you transition from employee to entrepreneur, you will have to constantly give yourself permission. You will have to constantly give yourself permission to be who God has called you to be, to go out on a limb where nobody else is at, where nobody else understands. And I remember that being really the start of my journey with this business, is having to let go of something that mattered to me dearly, having to be misunderstood, to feel all kinds of guilt and shame, but simultaneously give myself permission and be obedient. And so then as I traveled, right? So as I start this journey, I done kicked it with my feet, Jesus. As I journey, right? So I make the decision, I do all of the work of letting the nonprofit go and start trying to figure out what's next in my journey. And as I did that, the only thing that I really knew was I wanted to build a business that had both income and impact, right? I've told this story multiple times where my nonprofit was impactful, right? We got lots of crazy positive testimonials from the men that we were serving. But it was not profitable, meaning we weren't getting paid on a regular basis, right? We would get paid here and there. We would get stipends for this or that. We had enough money to cover our expenses, right? Whatever it is that we were doing within the business, but paying ourselves was hit or miss. And so I said, this time around, I'm not doing that. Like, first of all, you can't get to legacy broke. That's not possible. No matter who you admire from a success standpoint, every single one of them had money. Even if they didn't have money themselves, they figured out how to get money, right? So the Martin Luther Kings, the Mother Teresas, the Gandhis, all these people that we don't necessarily think had a lot of money. Sometimes I look at some of the trending people currently, whether it's Nipsey Hussle, whether it's Jay-Z, some of the people that are out here being great philanthropists and people who my people typically admire, they had money. Like, you have to have money in order to have real impact when we start talking about transformational impact. And so sometimes I think I don't want to say we forget that, because it's kind of always in the back of our mind, but many times I find that entrepreneurs are not money minded enough. Either they're undervaluing themselves monetarily, or they just are counting every little bitty success that they have as great. And I'm like, that's still mediocrity. Like, we have to find this very thin line. It's a very thin balance of celebrating our successes, the wins that we have, while simultaneously understanding that that's not the goal, right? Sometimes I find people celebrating every little thing. And I'm like, on the one hand, I get that, because A-type people don't typically celebrate themselves enough, right? So on the one hand, I really do want you to celebrate the fact that you did 3 Facebook Lives this week and you only been doing 1, or you only been hit or miss, or you've been scared to get on Facebook Live. Like, I want you to celebrate that a little bit, but not a lot. Like, I want you to acknowledge it and pat yourself on the back, but I don't want you to spend 6 weeks celebrating that, because that's still mediocrity, right? Like, so I hope you hear my heart, because there is a thin line, and I do think that there needs to be more acknowledging our own progress versus celebrating successes. That's probably how I would differentiate it. There's a difference between acknowledging your progress and celebrating successes. So, as I went on this journey to figure out what was next, and figure out what kind of business I wanted to build, and who I was going to serve, and what my skill set was, and how do I do the for-profit side versus the non-profit side, and just figuring out all of these different aspects, trying to focus on how to build a profitable business. That was my focus, right? Then I ran into another problem where I had to give myself permission yet again, right? Because I said, in this entrepreneur journey, you will have to give yourself permission repeatedly. Okay. So when I looked up and I was about 6 months into that decision of, all right, putting that down, figuring out what to pick up next, 6 months into that decision, I had spent so much money on learning, so much money, $50,000, so much money. Listen, it doesn't bother me today, but at the time, you get to the end of that 6 month mark and you realize, bro, you broker than you've ever been. Like, prior to starting this business, you was never this broke, ever. And then you jump off a ledge and decide you're going to do something you've never seen done before, and you end up broker? How is that a thing? How do you end up broker? Right? But the reason why I share that story yet again is because, remember, you're going to have to give yourself permission, right? You're going to have to figure out how to let go of guilt, let go of shame, let go of disappointment, all these things that will come up as you fail, right? Because the truth is, you will fail, right? Every investment won't work out. Everything that you try won't work. And I don't know that life really prepared most of us for failure. And it's such an interesting dynamic. I was talking to someone the other day about, because most of the clients that I serve are Black women. Some of them are white, some of them are male, but mostly they're Black women. And there's an interesting dynamic with Black women, right? There's an interesting dynamic of, and it's not really specific just to Black women, but because that's who I serve, those are the ones that I'm seeing the most. Where when you're a powerhouse over here in your 9 to 5, right? Whatever you did, most of my clients are beasts at their 9 to 5. But then you come over here and in this entrepreneur journey, and you have to figure out how to be a beginner all over again. You have to figure out how to fail and get up. And it's like such an interesting dynamic, because in this entrepreneur space, you would think that you would just kill it because you was killing it over here. But the challenges are different. What's required of you is different. And so that's why you have to keep giving yourself permission. There is no one and done, right? There is no one and done. So I look up and I've spent all this money, and now I have all this guilt and all this shame, because now my kids are watching me, right? They going without because I'm trying to make this thing happen, right? And as a parent, especially if you're a single parent and you're the one providing, 98% of what they need, when you spend money on shit you ain't supposed to, man, it brings on a lot of mom guilt. And so I had to wade through that, figure out what I needed, and give myself permission again. I had to give myself permission again, right? After making mistake after mistake, after having failure after failure, I had to give myself permission to get up and try again. Right? Even with my kids watching, even with them seeing the failures that I had made and other people seeing the failures that I'm like, Michelle, you can't do this again because but you have to learn to give yourself permission to go after what God has already told you is yours. Right? You have to give yourself permission to go after the things that are the deepest desires of your heart. So the first thing that I really wanted to share around the message today was just about permission. Because the truth is, there are so many things that are just waiting on you, but you'll have to give yourself permission to go after them. There are things that you've already gotten glimpses of, right? Things that you've seen a measure of success around. So you know that they are possible, or you see other people, having similar successes. And so if you don't learn to give yourself permission, you'll stay stuck. The other thing that's required for this journey is faith. Listen, I know that people think that I am super confident and I got it all together. And in some ways that's true, right? In some areas of my life, that's true. And in some moments, that's true. But my journey is really no different than yours as an entrepreneur in terms of every time I raise my price, I got to have faith, right? Every time I make a big investment into my business, I got to have faith, right? Like permission and faith are requirements for the success that you're looking for. And I want you to begin to evaluate and look at, well, where are you not giving yourself permission to go after the thing that you know is possible or the thing that you believe is possible? Where are you not having faith? Where are you staying in discouragement, right? Versus believing. And what are you doing to increase your faith? What are the things that you are saying to yourself? Because that's the key. Like there's something to that right there. Is your ability to talk yourself into or out of, depending on the scenario, where you need to be. We have to learn in those moments where we have to have faith for the next season or the next step to be able to grant ourselves some grace. That's really what it's about. To be easy on ourselves look at how far I've come over the last year, over the last 6 months, over the last whatever, right? If you cannot be proud of yourself for the progress that you've made over a 6-month, 12-month period of time, then you probably need to be giving yourself more permission to go after things, right? You need to be jumping more often, right? You need to be having more faith. But for many of us, it's about acknowledging, right, the progress that we've made while learning to be patient with where you're going. And one of the things that got brought up today in my conversation with Doreen, which was so on point, is the fact that sometimes God is not giving you the thing that you're asking for because you're not prepared for it, right? You're saying, I want this kind of month, I want 10K months or 20K months, or I want this kind of client, or I want whatever it is that you're counting as your next, goals. You're saying that, but you haven't positioned yourself to be ready for that. And so God is really doing you a favor by not giving it to you, right? Because if he gave it to you and you started filling programs, you'd have bad client relationships and bad testimonials and, frustration and burnout and exhaustion. And like now is the time to position yourself for whatever is coming, whatever it is that you've asked for, and then believe is coming next. And so I just wanted to jump on and say that, if legacy is still the goal, right? Like if what you're after is breaking generational curses and getting to your next level, not just for you. Part of it is for you, right? For you to be able to take care of your health the way you want to, for you to be able to have the self-care activities that you want, for you to be able to take care of your family the way you want, and there to be no strife, no strain. And then part of that legacy is for other people, right? The lives that you're going to impact, the communities that you can change. In order for you to get there, if legacy is still the goal for you, you will have to grant yourself both permission and you will have to have faith. Both are required for this journey in order to get to legacy. So I just wanted to get on and say that because I see that it can be a challenge for people to give themselves permission to put them first instead of their kids and their husband and their baby daddy and this and that and whatever, right? Man, it really requires that you give yourself permission to go after some things. And then you have to have the resiliency or the faith to keep going after it, right? When things didn't pan out exactly the way you planned with your launch, or, you know, with the collaboration or whatever it is that you're doing, you have to have faith and believe that God is still on the throne. He still can work this out for your good, even though you don't know, you don't necessarily know how, and you don't necessarily know when, but you know that it's still possible. So hopefully this was helpful to you all. If it is, let me know that. Just drop, yep, this was helpful in the comments. If you're catching the replay, say #replay. Share it out to somebody else who you know might be struggling, because entrepreneurship is a freaking beast. Like, it will take you out if you're not careful. But I am 100% sure that many of us are so used to playing small with our 9 to 5 kind of history, that when it comes time to play big, like, oh yeah, millionaire status, billionaire status, consistent revenue, like whatever your next goal is, and that shit gets scary, and there are so many fears that will pop up. But I'm just here to remind you that you're still able. God has still called you. He is still able, because the truth is, it ain't even going to be by your strength, right? Our responsibility is to be consistent, right? That's it. It's not to try to make a way. It is simply to be consistent and let him work his magic. So I hope you guys have a fabulous Friday. I'm out. Peace.